All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. Today is Monday, April 7th of 2025. Looking ahead here, we have a 7-game MLB main slate set to get underway later this evening. We have a 2-game NBA main slate, 5-game NHL main slate, and it is a Masters week over in the Gulf Streets. So it's going to be a fun one all week long here. But for those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew, one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS related questions. Get your questions in one of 3 ways here. First off, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Second, post it live in the YouTube chat. Third way, post it in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord and want to get access to that channel, there is a link in the description of this video. You also get access to our similar channels, individual sport channels, and you get access to the rest of the SaberSim teams. Can't say enough good things about the Discord. But with that said, we do this show Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and then we do this show on Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So tune in any one of those days, get your questions answered. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me here on a Monday afternoon. Let's get SaberSim up, and we will start answering some questions as always. So, got SaberSim up, and first question that came in from Deshaun: how would you handle using mini uniques on a small NBA slate like today, or should we not use mini uniques at all since the slate is small? Good question. You know, it's the concept for determining the uniques isn't going to be different than any other day, any other slate, but the number you get to will be different, right? So the number of uniques you can achieve is always going to be dependent on typically how many players are in the player pool, right? So bigger the player pool, bigger the uniques you can get to. This is why you see it in like hockey, especially. You can get to a very high number of uniques in hockey. Baseball is another one too, right? Really big player pool. But NBA here, a lot smaller player pool, and then the number of the games on the slate impacts that drastically. So also somebody was asking me about this, maybe worth mentioning. If you guys aren't seeing the games panel up at the top, there is an arrow here under in the top right corner. Click this arrow. If the arrows are pointing up, you will see the games. If the arrows are pointing down, you will not see the games. So I just want to call that out real quick because it did come up earlier today. But either way, let's build some NBA lineups, and we just talk about this, right? So I'm just going to build 500 lineups, going to leave everything at default, and then we'll spin this up. So, even if we're only looking at players with a 10-point projection or greater, right? So we go and just filter for one team. I mean, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 players on Sacramento. Maybe closer to 10 on Detroit. So we'll just round, say 18. Maybe another 10 on Philly, 28. So, there is not more than 35 to 40, viable players in the player pool for this slate, right? So pretty small. That'll significantly impact the number of uniques we're able to get to. But the way we get there, right, the way we figure out what we want to do is going to be the same. So we go, right, and we got to do a couple things. So we're in the post build, set up our aggregate metrics, either average projection alone if you're on starter, or average projection and your ROI metrics if you're using max, median, minimum. If you're using average like I am, just kind of depends. And then so we set those up, right? And then we're still going to go and verify our exposures, our leverages, and then we're going to start cranking up our uniques, and then we're going to see where we stop, right? So here at one unique, our average projection is 235.6, average ROI is 290. We go up to 2, ROI stays the same. We go to 3 uniques, projection goes down about 2 points, ROI goes down about 35%. And, here we're only at 3, right? Usually we're at 4, we're at 5, maybe we're at 6. So the steps we're taking here are the same, but the number we're getting to is basically kind of stopping short, right? But we should be expecting that too. So here, right, 3 seems like a pretty good number. On other slates, it might be bigger, but the way we're doing it is not going to change, right? That's kind of like a sport slate size agnostic approach, and we want to use that approach because it just carries over so well to all the different things you're going to run into. All right, next question. Show me your method to building lineups for NBA Fanduel single game. Sure. So let's go over to single game Fanduel specifically. And we go back to NBA. And it looks like there's only one here at the moment. I mean, there's only 2 games. So Philly, Miami. And we'll go into a build. So I think that salary ranges are like kind of interesting, right? What I would probably do, like anytime I load this up, is I would just come in and I would sort by salary. And I would just say, okay, you know, you can run into situations, especially like late in the NBA season, where like multiple high salary players are just like out. And that could still happen today. I mean, we're looking at this. The top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 salary players on the slate. 2 of them are already out, and 3 of them are questionable. Okay. What if one of them gets ruled out? What if 2 get ruled out? What if 3 get ruled out? Right. This is going to have like a massive impact on the slate. You know, I would be open to like lowering minimum salary even further. Like in this case, I'd probably open this up to like 40,000. I mean, you could probably even put it on like 0 if you want. Like if these 3 guys all get ruled out, almost like anything is game here, and I would just drop min salary to 0. So I would just keep this in mind when building salary, when building single game lineups, whether this is on FanDuel, whether this is on DraftKings, you know what I mean? I would just like always be aware of the statuses of the highest salary players, because even if you had a minimum, right, sometimes it'll just limit your combinations so significantly. So checking status can be important. Lowering minimum salary can be viable depending on injury situations. But small note there. Other than that, not doing anything else here. No rules, no filters. Really want to rely on the single game simulations, right? Those 0-10 correlation sliders. So for this, I'm only going to build 200 lineups. And I'm going to click build. So FanDuel is going to be a little bit different, right? Because with FanDuel, you have these multiple options, right? You have utility, you have pro, you have start, you have MVP, right? And players can go into any one of these, right? So the effective duplication on FanDuel is significantly lower than it is on DraftKings, right? Because in DraftKings, you only have like captain and flex, or captain and utility, however they classify it. But definitely a different vibe, you know, kind of a different feel over here on the FanDuel side. I think that, you know, this format is like way cooler and way more intuitive. And frankly, I would like to see FanDuel apply this to other sports. Like, I think they don't do this for like football for like whatever reason. I don't know why, but it would be kind of a cool concept for them to apply to NFL. But I don't know if they'll do it because they haven't done it yet. So I'm not getting my hopes up that they're going to do it. But here, right, I would probably start looking at the highest kind of work my way down here, right? So like this is actually one of the few times that working right to left. I mean, no, it's fine. I'm not going to say that. All right. But anyways, I'm just moving some things around. So, you know, at this point, it's kind of up to you to decide your risk tolerances, right? How much risk you want to have to certain plays and things like that. Remember that the ownership shown is like total ownership. So like, we're not saying Bam's going to be 70% in the MVP, because like these wouldn't add up, right? Like these values need to add up to 100% for 100% of lineups, and it's like over. I think you can use pool percentage as like a good indicator here of just kind of like optimal rate. And I would be basing my leverages mostly off of pool percentage here. So for me, this is like a little aggressive on Bam. I might personally like drop this maybe closer to like 50%, be a little bit flatter. Not to say you have to, but it's just an idea. And that brings Grimes up a little bit. So a little bit of leverage on Bam, a little bit on Hero. Seems like we just like Miami more here, which seems fine. And then we can do this across the board, right? Okay. Leverages on our stars here look good. Kind of same guys. We're like really just like targeting them. Pro looks good as well. And so just trying to manage my leverage a little bit. Lonnie Walker is like super high exposed. I might drop him a little bit personally, maybe like 60% feels fine. I'm not using uniques as much here, just making some smaller tweaks. The uniques are going to go down faster. And, it's just really just a couple small spots, right? Like 1 max exposure for risk, 2 max exposures for risk. And that was it. And sometimes, just 1 or 2 small changes can be better than trying to indirectly do it. Right here, I'm just directly managing my risk as I want. And then it looks better rather than trying to be indirect with it. So I know that this is the change I wanted to make. I'm pretty comfortable with everything else. And I'd be done here, right? I'm not going to do too much else. I'm going to rely on the builder and let it do its thing. So this is the approach I'd be taking with FanDuel single game. Notice we didn't do anything for duplication. We kind of said like, hey, with this format, it's not as prominent and we can leave it alone. So that's why I'm not doing anything for this. I probably would be doing something if I was doing it over on the DK side. All right. Let's see. DK stuff, 150 lineups. Yeah, and if you're doing 150, this would like be the same kind of thing, right? This lineups would be 150, but all the steps in between, right? Managing your risk, verifying your leverages, verifying your exposures, comparing to pool percentage, right? This is just on a little bit bigger scale, right? I mean, we can still see it here, right? Numbers go up, but we're still using the same information to make our judgments. So, all right. And how after the sims are done would you sort the lineups that you're going to upload to FanDuel or DK? So a couple things with this, right? You're going to depend what plan you're on. Number one is I would use the ROI if you're using contest sims of whatever contest you're playing. We have a default contest sim on here, and I'm just using the default. If you're not using contest sims, stick with the single game Saber score. Okay, this Saber score is designed for these single game formats, and the biggest difference between the single game Saber score and the other Saber scores is that this one has this sim optimals metric. Okay, so what is sim optimals? Well, we can see it underneath the lineup here in the summary statistics. We see this one that says sim optimals and it says 3, right? Well, what does the 3 imply? Well, what the 3 implies here, right, is that when we were building your lineups, trying to fill out your pool, this exact combination of 5 players, Bam in the MVP, Grimes in the star, Bona in the pro, and then Butler and Walker in the utility, this exact combination of 5 players showed up 3 times. Remember, we're only going to put a lineup into your pool 1 time. But if this lineup is showing up again and again, then that means that, the win equity of this lineup is like kind of, I'll say it again. Hey, this lineup showed up again. It's already in the pool. Okay, ignore it. Okay, this lineup showed up again. Okay, ignore it. We're like, hey, it's kind of valuable information that this lineup keeps popping up. Maybe we should do something with that. And then that's when we started tallying this information. And then we applied it to our single game Saber score format. So it's sim optimals, projection, and a negative weight on ownership here. So that's what's going on with that. Either one of those, or those are the 2 best options. So I would stick with one of those. All right. Similar request for Showdown on DK. Yeah, for sure. So DK, the biggest difference, right, is what we talked about, where we probably will have to do something to account for duplication on the DK side. And if you don't know how much to do, then, you could do what we've talked about in the past, right? Of like always going back into a past showdown and looking, right? So like say we're playing the 50 cent mini max, right? Okay, so we're going to play the 50 cent mini max. This will be like our default here, 5,000 entries, 150 lineups. I would just go back to a past slate and, we go back to yesterday, right? Okay, I come into yesterday and we'll let this load. And we go to Houston Golden State, for instance. Okay, we go to contests. And then their mini max, same size, right? So same exact size contest. And this will give us a good indication of what the information we're trying to find, right? Okay, I click on a contest, I go to users. I'm just going to look at people who maxed it, highest sim ROI. And even for the highest sim ROI lineups in this 5,000 man 150 max, there is some duplication here, right? 6 average dupes, 4 average dupes, 7, 8. Seems like a range between like 4 to 8 here. Okay, well, that means we could do something here, right? It seems like it's coming up often enough where we probably should try and do something. So this tells me like, hey, I do want to account for duplication over on the DK side when I'm doing my single game showdowns. All right, so let's go back to today, right? We go back to today. Where are we? Okay, showdown. And we go to build lineups. So follow up here. So should I be using the optimizer or single game for the sims? So we recommend, like if you're talking about your build mode, sim mode versus optimizer mode, we always recommend using sim mode. And what's happening with sim mode, right, is that when sim diversity is on 10, we are taking single game sims from our database. We're taking one sim at a time, and then we play out the sim. The best lineup that can be created from that one sim is the lineup that you get into your pool. And then we do that until we fill out your entire pool. So every sim is being used alone. It's not being grouped, right? So when sim diversity goes down, now we're taking, 3 sims, 5 sims. We're taking bigger groups of sims and then playing those out and then using the average numbers from that group. For the showdowns, we really want to rely on the play-by-play sims to get that natural correlation, to get those game scripts. And we build your lineups based on that, right? When you're using optimizer mode, what optimizer mode is doing is it's using the average projections, and then it's building the highest projected lineup first, and then the second highest projected, and then the third. So if, you and I both kicked off a build at the same time and we were using optimizer mode, we would get the same lineups, right? Because there is only one highest projected lineup. But when we're using sim mode, right, you can get some sims, I can get different sims. The way those sims play out affect the lineups. And then that's how, SaberSim users don't all get the same lineups. So sim mode is definitely going to be preferred for any type of tournament, any type of GPP. The only time I would use optimizer mode is if I'm playing like head-to-heads, cash games, like double ups, contests of those nature. All right. So we're over here on the DK side, right? Similarly to kind of how we talked about on the FanDuel side, I would always take a look at the highest salary players again, right? So Bam and Hero are going to be super important. Wiggins is going to be super important. We could end up in a situation where 6 of the top, 9 salary players are all out, which would be pretty crazy, right? So like I said, I'm going to drop min salary to 0 in this case, just give the builder more options. With some of these guys out, with more pending, right? You would So just last time, make sure everybody's in before you build your lineups. That's good. Now, this one comes up a couple times. I do want to mention this. If you guys are like, hey, I need to build some lineups earlier, just like for some placeholders or things like that, okay, that's fine. Totally get it. You want to get those placeholders in. Some people come back to the app and they're like, hey, 1, 2, 3 of my guys are out. I'm just going to quick swap them. Okay, so my point is, do not use quick swap before the slate starts. Okay, if the slate has not started, it is always better to run a new build. You can either open a new build, you could use the rebuild lineups button, right? Like let's just like build some lineups while we talk about this. So I'm just going to kick this off. So the swap tools are built to be used when a slate is in progress. Okay. In showdowns, you cannot swap players out once the slate has started. So the quick swap tool is basically not built to work with captain utility slate types, right? Where there is a, 2 versions of every player. It's not built to do that because it is meant to be used when a slate is in progress. So never quick swap before a slate. Always either click this rebuild lineups button. We'll refresh the projections and then click rebuild lineups. Or let's say Bam gets ruled out. Notice we had updated his projection as like one of our 2 changes here. You would have to reset the projection for him to go to 0 because we won't override your custom projection. So if you wanted to use this build again, maybe you refresh the projections, maybe you undo projection adjustments, and then you redo them and then click rebuild lineups. Okay. So some notes there, just best practice type of stuff. Wanted to throw it out there. All right. So we are in the post build for this DK showdown. Right, I'm going to do this one using single game saber score. So we did the last one using ROI. Here I'll use the single game saber score. Some other things I might want to do here, right? How many lineups do we have? 200. So I might want to do something for ownership, right? We did see that dupes were in like the 4 to 8 range. Now you can decide how aggressive you want to be, right? Personally, I like the idea of being less aggressive and then working my way up to being more aggressive. So for me, the way I kind of rank this is like, I would probably start with a sum ownership filter first. And then if that's not working out really well, then I would try a geometric mean filter. And then if I need more, help getting lower duplicated, then I might try messing around with the max salary. So that's kind of the approach I like to take. It works really easy if you're playing a lot of these, because on one day you could try one, you can go review the lineups the next day. You come back, you make an adjustment, you review again, and then you make another adjustment, right? And just kind of iterate over it until you figure out exactly what you want to do. So here, right, say it's my first time doing it, I would probably want to come in here and just start with something easy like a sum ownership filter and say, hey, show me lineups with ownership less than X, right? And then I'm going to come in here and then I'm just going to make up a number, and I'm mostly trying to figure out how many of my lineups go in the trash. So I got 250, only one lineup went in the trash. Okay. So what about 240, right? I'm basically trying to get to a point where I'm putting about 10 to 20% of my lineups in the trash. So 16 lineups, this is like 8%. So we're super close here. I might just go down ever so slightly more, like 235. And now we have 25 lineups in the trash. This is perfect, right? We're just kind of trimming the highest owned lineups out of our pool. And we're saying, hey, we kind of want to avoid these ones at least today, and then go from there. We're not saying we can't play max salary lineups. We're not, getting rid of those, right? So that's like one of the most aggressive things you could do, is just completely block out certain salary lineups. We don't want to get to that step just yet, right? We're going to start a little bit softer with some ownership, and then we're going to try maybe product, and then we're going to, maybe end up using salary as well. But you got to figure it out, got to iterate over it. Let's just try this one. Single game saber score. This all looks good. Now, again, I'm going to go manage some risk. So Bam, 25%. He's in 50% of our lineups. You know, you could leave him. It's like 2x his ownership, right? Seems okay. Depends how aggressive you want to be. Maybe I want my leverages to be a little bit closer together. So maybe I bring him down to like 40%, right? Okay, I bring him down to 40. Now Tyler Hero goes up. Him and Bam are like equal. Maybe I like this, right? Okay. So I'm going to leave that. We're still taking stands on those two players. Kind of same thing we saw over on the FanDuel side. And then I come in here and I look at my leverages and my utilities, and they're pretty flat, right? Nobody over 20%. Maybe I like this, right? So we just made one single adjustment to a max exposure for risk. And, you know, we're still playing. Our lowest lineup rank is 22. We're still right outside the top 20. And we like the way these lineups look. We like the way they're leveraged. So here I'd be ready to save these and upload these as well. So that's what I'd be doing over on the DK side. So we talked about FanDuel single game. We talked about DK single game. We talked about min uniques on 2-game NBA slates, right? It's all good stuff. A lot of NBA talk today. Jared said, what is Flagship MME Own and how is it different from the My Own? Okay, good question. So there are, it's going to depend on what plan you're on, right? If you're on starter, you're going to have one set of ownership, which is going to be the Flagship MME ownership. Okay. This is like the standard ownership you're going to see across the industry. Mostly people projecting ownership for the large field 150 max contest, main contest of the day. Okay. So, you know, your $15, your $18, 150 max, right? People call it the flagship because it's like the main contest that they promote, highest prize pool, all that stuff. Now, if you're on Ultimate, you're going to have more ownership options. And the reason there are more ownership options is because these are used in the contest sims. We do not think that ownership for the $18 150 max is going to be the same as the $222 4 max. We know these contests play differently based on our back testing, right? So we want to use different types of ownership for different types of contests. This is why there are more than one type of ownership, right? And we can just see the impact that this has here by, let's say, you know, we go to the highest value plays on the slate, right? Sort by value. Okay, here for Flagship MME, Lonnie Walker, 55%, Jared Butler, 40%, right? Okay, well, instead of the large field 150 max, what if we're playing like a high stakes single entry, right? Well, Lonnie Walker goes up to 92% owned and Jared Butler comes into 74%, right? All of these adjustments are coming from our back testing. We've back tested contests, we've grouped them together. We understand the differences at the rates players get played based on their value, salary, projection, all those type of things. And we're accounting for that in these different ownership projections. So the other thing to remember is that whatever source is selected is whatever's in the My Own column. So like you might see a column that says Flagship MME, right? And then you see one that says My Own and you're like, what's the difference? Well, they're actually the same if MME is the one that's chosen. Now I could look at my Flagship MME column, but then what if I switch it to high stakes single entry? Okay, well now they're different, right? So whatever source is chosen is whatever's going to be reflected, but ownership, the My Own column is just a mirror of whatever is chosen here, and it could very well be Flagship MME, and they could be the same. So that's what's going on with Flagship MME and My Own column. All right. Good stuff there. We did like 3 different build demos today. 2-game NBA DK, single game FanDuel, Captain Showdown DK, and feel like we talked a lot about NBA here late in April or here in April, which is cool. But appreciate you guys tuning in. We're all caught up with questions here. I'll be back tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern for our next show. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.